The next presentation will be delivered by Cesar Cerrudo from IO Active, and it will cover the laws of disclosure to follow, particularly important for a young company.
Hi, everyone. So, one part of the cybersecurity in general, one part that is very important is the vulnerability disclosure process. This is when, after you find a vulnerability, then you try to contact the affected vendor so the vulnerability is fixed, and then a patch is produced and released to the affected customers. So why this is important? Because the vulnerabilities are one of the main reasons people, companies, organizations get hacked. So when you have a vulnerability and it's not fixed, then people, systems are exposed and can be compromised. So it's very important for any organization to have a very clear handling of the vulnerability disclosure process. And if not, then you can have a lot of problem when dealing with vulnerabilities. So I have been reporting vulnerabilities for a long time, probably almost 20 years, and I have reported more than 1,000 vulnerabilities, some found by me, some found by people working with me. So based on all this experience, I thought it would be interesting to write down 10 recommendations that I call 10 laws of disclosure that I think will be very useful mostly for organizations dealing with vulnerabilities. And this is mostly for the side of the affected party and not for the side of the vulnerability researcher. So the first law is that the vulnerability reported is always right. Sometimes it happens that people that report the vulnerability could not be very nice. It could be or it could be stupid. It could be aggressive. It could report the vulnerability in a not very clear way, so the affected vendor doesn't understand what's going on. But anyways, if you're an affected vendor, then you better try to understand, and you better try to keep the vulnerability finder happy, because it doesn't matter if he or she is stupid, is a bad person, or whatever. He has a 0 days on your technology, so you better keep him or her happy, because he can polish the 0 day and you have a lot of problems. So it doesn't matter that the person reporting the vulnerability is whatever. You just try to keep him or her happy. Then, this is, as most of these laws are very important, is to have an easy to find and simple way to report vulnerabilities. It happens to me very frequently that some person of our team find a vulnerability and I'm in charge of reporting. So I have to look for the contact information from that company to be able to report the vulnerability. And what I do is, use Google, take a look at the website of the affected vendor, look at different places. But sometimes it's almost impossible to find a good contact information. For instance, on the website, there is no way to find a contact for security issues. So what you find is the contact information from support, for sales, marketing, whatever. And sometimes I use those email and try to ask them to share the right contact information for the right team or right person inside the company. But they don't answer, or sometimes they answer anything. Sometimes I have experiences where I contact support and say, okay, I need you to help me to report this. Please share the information. I will say, support doesn't deal with this, and that's it. They close the case. Then, when I don't find a good way to contact at the website, I look on LinkedIn, try to see people that work at the company, and maybe they are in a technology position, maybe the CTOs, the CISO, etc., or some engineers, and ask them to share contact information. And most of the time they don't answer. And also when I contact them, I had to explain them that I'm not trying to sell anything, that I just try, to follow best practice and to report a vulnerability so it gets fixed. Sometimes they will think that I'm trying to sell services, and so I have to explain. But sometimes they don't even answer. So when this happens, then you don't have any other option that, just try 2 or 3 times and then just publish the findings. Because it doesn't make sense for any company to, in this case for IOActive, to have 0 days hidden from the public. So if we know about a problem, then we try to contact the vendor, get it fixed, get it patched, and then release the details. But when we can't contact the vendor, then we wait for some time, and then we'll publish the vulnerability so people is aware about the problem, and then maybe the affected customers will complain to the vendor and we ask what's going on, why you don't fix this, etc. And sadly, this is something that happens sometimes, and all because they don't have a very clear policy, they don't have a very clear contact information that is easy to find in the website. So any company should have in their website or in social media or any place a clear contact information for reporting security vulnerabilities. So the next law is that your rules and procedures are not important. This is related that some vendors will tell you, okay, they have a good way to report the vulnerability. They have clear information in the website. Say, okay, if you find a vulnerability, you can report here, maybe an online form or an email where you can send the details. But sometimes they will say, but you have to do this and you have to do this. You have to give me this information. For example, sometimes they will have an online form that you have to complete to submit the vulnerability, and they will request for 100 details, what products are affected, or this and that. And sometimes if you don't complete everything, they won't allow you to submit the form. And as a researcher, I don't want to spend 5-10 minutes of my life filling a form to report a vulnerability. Why? Because I'm doing the work for free. I have done research on my own time, or maybe working at some company, and then I'm reporting it without getting paid. I'm just doing them, the affected party, a favor to get the vulnerability fixed. So I don't want to be 10, 15, 5 minutes, even a minute filling a form. I just want to send an email with the details, and then they have to take care of everything. And sometimes other companies will have a bug bounty program with another third party, like HackerOne or BugCrowd or some of those. And they will ask you to report in their platform. So for doing that, you have to create an account, also fill a form, follow up with someone else from the other side, telling you, okay, I need more information, I need this and that. So you spend a lot of time trying to report a vulnerability, and I don't think that's fair. I mean, if I find a vulnerability, I just want to report it, and then the vendor should live with that. I don't want a bug bounty. I don't want to fill a dozen fields in a form. I just want to report the vulnerability. So just give me an email and send the vulnerability here, and that's it. So I don't have to do the work of the affected company. So the rules and procedure they set for the vulnerability researchers to follow to report a vulnerability, for me is not good. I mean, they should have a very easy way, send an email here, and that's it. This is also very important to keep the vulnerability reported up to date. Sometimes it happens that you report a vulnerability, the affected vendor will tell you, okay, thank you for reporting the vulnerability, and that's it. Then you don't hear any more from them. So it's very important, after you acknowledge you got the vulnerability information, you set some expectations on how the communications will be. Like, you, as an affected vendor, you can say, okay, we are going to take a look at the findings. We are going to confirm the findings, and we'll let you know next week about it, or maybe at some date or in 2 weeks, whatever. But as an affected vendor, you should keep up to date on what's going on with the vulnerability you are trying to test and fix. You should tell the vulnerability finder what you are doing and when you are doing it. Because if not, then sometimes people will get mad, because it's like, I report a vulnerability and I don't hear from the affected vendor for 3 weeks, and I say, okay, what's going on? And maybe I will ask for feedback, and then they won't answer very fast, so I can get mad and just publish the 0 day. And this is also common. You can see this on social media, when some researchers get very, very mad because they don't get feedback at all sometimes from the affected vendor, or the affected vendor doesn't pay much attention to the finder. So it's very important to set expectations, to set some timeline, and keep the vulnerability reporter up to date. The fifth law is about not playing dirty. I call play dirty when you report the vulnerability and the vendor start to do different actions that are not related with fixing the vulnerability and releasing a patch. For instance, they will try to make look that you are trying to blackmail them, saying, "Oh, why are you looking at our technology? Why are you out finding vulnerability on our technology?" It's saying that you, implying that you probably are trying to find 0 days in the technology in order to sell them or to ask them for services. So every time I report a vulnerability and the vendor is not very mature on cybersecurity, I explain them that I'm not looking for a job. I'm not looking to sell them services. I just want to report the vulnerability so they can fix it. Some vendors, sometimes they will say that they want you to help them to fix the vulnerability, or they want you to help them to test the vulnerability, and as an paid project. So what I tell them is that I'm not on the services, I'm not on sales. So if they want to have any services from our company, I can put them in touch with the right person, but that will be a complete different conversation. I never talk about the services, or say, I just talk about the vulnerability and how to get it fixed, and that's it. So I don't mix conversations. Sometimes they will try to mix the conversations, so they could go after to the media and say, no, these companies were trying to blackmail us up with these vulnerabilities, etc. But also, when they try to engage you in business, they will try to make you sign an NDA so that you don't publish the findings. But what we tell the vendor is that the findings were before any deal, any job we had with them. So we will publish the vulnerability details no matter what. It doesn't matter if we do a job testing the fixes or not, but we publish the same because the finding was before doing any work for the affected party. Sometimes also when they want the company to test the fixes, for instance, they will write a contract. You have to sign NDAs, and sometimes they will be going back and forth with the contract and with the possible show for months, sometimes even for a year. The problem is that they say, okay, no, but we want you to test the fixes, so you have to wait to to publish the vulnerability details, right? Because the fix is not ready and you have to test the fix. So after that, then maybe you can publish. And sometimes they play dirty in this way because they will be back and forth for months without signing the contract, without sending the fixes to test, etc. And in this way, they can postpone the vulnerability publication. So what we do is that we try to be very clear, saying, okay, this is a timeline. We reported this long time ago. We need to, a lot of people is affected, so we need to publish, and that's it. But this is common with some vendors. They will try, to play dirty and to buy time and delay vulnerability publication. Compensate. This is about not only money. It's about acknowledging the effort that the vulnerability researcher put in finding the vulnerabilities. Because if you are an independent vulnerability researcher, you are basically doing the work for free. All the research, then also contacting the vendor, letting them know about the issue, collaborating with them, and then publish the details. All this take a lot of time and effort depending on the vulnerability. So it's always good to have a compensation from the vendor that could be in the way of just a public acknowledgement in the website saying thank you, John, for reporting this vulnerability and helping to protect our customers. Or it could be a T-shirt, or it could be money, it could be anything. But it's very important to acknowledge the effort and the time that people take to research and report the vulnerabilities in some way. So if you don't compensate, nobody will help you in the future. If I help you to find fix a problem, and then you don't even acknowledge my effort online, just saying thanks online, then I probably won't help you anymore. And next time I find something, I will just publish it. So this is related with law number 5, like forget NDAs and threats. And sadly, it's common that sometimes the vendors, after you report the vulnerability, they will try to make you sign an NDA. Probably they can say, okay, we are going to share with you the fixes, so you can help us to fix, to test the fix. But you have to sign this NDA because you will have access to the code, or you will have early access to this software that is not public, etc. But the NDA could have some clauses that can forbid you to publish then the details. Or sometimes they will just make threats in the way of, trying to sue you or trying to intimidate you in some way. I forgot to mention in Law 5 that sometimes other tricks from the vendor is if you find a vulnerability in the affected vendor will probably try to contact your customers or other companies that are related with your company, and they will try to put pressure so you don't publish the vulnerabilities. Sometimes also vendors will contact, depending on the technology that is affected, they will contact local or global authorities to let them know that you find an issue that can be affecting, critical infrastructure or can affect some government organizations. So then the government will go after you and say, oh, why are you doing this? And you have to deal with that. It happens sometimes to me that one of the guys that worked with me find a vulnerability in a electronic lock. The electronic lock was used on ATMs and another devices. So we reported the issue to the affected vendor. It's basically the electronic lock that used to keep the money safe on the ATMs. But there was a different model from the electronic lock that also affected the the systems or the technology used to keep secret away, top secret from the U.S. government. But we didn't have that lock. We only mentioned in the vulnerability report that maybe those locks were also affected because it was the same technology, just different model. So after we reported that I sent an email to the affected company, I got an email from one government organization from the U.S., and the email has copy to the NSA, to the CIA, to the Army, to the FBI, etc. A lot of U.S. important organizations, and also that was sent by regular mail to me. And it said that in case we find some issues, we have to report only to them and no one else. And if we have the model of this electronic lock that was used by the US government for top secret, that was illegal, that we can't have that because that was only for government use. But if we find something there, we have to let them know only to them and no one else. So I had to explain them that we didn't have that model, that we thought that it was affected, but we didn't have it. But it was very weird to have, a letter and an email from a government organization from the US, and also with copy to the CIA, NSA, Army, etc. So, and the party that let the US government know about this was the affected vendor. So the affected vendor, instead of contacting us or answering to my email, they just go with the government and try to intimidate us. So this law is about having the right people in place, because sometimes it happens that you report a vulnerability, and on the other side, sometimes there is marketing people, because the company see the vulnerability as a threat, so they start thinking how they will deal with the media, how they will deal with the customer, etc. So sometimes they put some marketing guy answering the email, etc. And it's really a mess, because you are reporting something technical that have to be addressed by technical people, or at least people that knows about cybersecurity and also knows about the process of reporting a vulnerability, having it fixed and patched, etc. So it's very important, if you have a vulnerability reporting process, that you have the right people in the place, and not put sales or marketing people there, because the communications tend to be very awful, and that doesn't end very well. Then it's important to coordinate the way all the time when you report the vulnerability and get the answer. So you report the vulnerability, and when the vendor acknowledges, you should say, okay, we are going to test it and then fix it, but it will take 2 weeks to test it, and probably 2 more weeks to fix it, and then we release the fix. And then when they send update information, they should be very clear about the dates and time where they are releasing the fix, because usually when you find a vulnerability and it's fixed, then you will release an advisory, giving all the details about the vulnerability. And if you don't coordinate very well, the advisory could be out earlier than the fix is available, and that can cause problem. This year, we have this kind of problem where the vendors say, okay, we are going to fix this end of month on this date, and say, okay. And then after that date, we publish the vulnerability details, and then we realized that the vendor didn't release the fixes. So I asked them, you didn't release the fix? No, we couldn't release it because there was some problem, so we need more time. But we already have published the advisory, so we have to take the advisory down. We just remove it online, and then wait for the patch to be ready and coordinate well that time, and then publish the advisory again. So it can be very costly for a company if they don't properly coordinate, because the information can be out and people will be exposed and they can be hacked, and then it will be a mess because they won't be able to protect with the fix or protect with other measures. So it's very important to always properly coordinate between the vulnerability finder and the affected vendor. So the last law is about that it's always good to publish, because sometimes some vendors will just release a fix, but they won't tell anyone, or they maybe will tell the customers there is a fix available, but they won't say that they are addressing security problems. They say, okay, there is a new patch for the software, and they won't tell the customer you should patch your system because this has security fixes. Sometimes they won't say anything at all. They will just publish an update, leave the update there so the customer can update or not. So it's very important for affected customers to know that there is a new fix available and what the fix is addressing. I mean, if they are fixing a security issue, it should say, okay, these kind of security issues are addressed by this patch, and so people can decide if they should patch it or not. Because if you are a company with 1,000 systems, then you have to set time, you have the right procedures in place, so you have to plan how to fix and when to fix. So if the affected vendor doesn't tell people that a patch is available and what the patch is fixing and what are the risks, then people won't apply the fix. But this is common sometimes for the vendor to hide, the fixes and don't tell anyone. It happens once that we reported a vulnerability. It was a very critical vulnerability in IoT device and also in their cloud infrastructure. So we reported it to them, but then after that, I don't remember if we received a feedback very quickly, but some person for that company directly tried to contact the security researcher from IoActive and ask him to sell the details and tell him that they were going to fix the issue, but they didn't give me a good answer. So after that, I asked them about feedback, if they were going to fix the issues and when, and then say, yes, we are going to fix it. Then I didn't hear any more from them. So I asked it again, and they didn't answer. So after 3-4 months, we decided to publish all the findings. And then we realized, because they talked to the media and say, no, this is all. We already fixed this 2 months ago, so nobody is affected because all customers are already patched. So basically, they silently release a fix. People, I think they have automatic updates or something. So people updated the systems and they were protected, but they never let us know. They don't even let the people know about the security problems. So when we published, they said, no, this is all, doesn't matter. So basically, they didn't tell us, and they didn't tell the affected customer that they released a fix, right? So this was really bad behavior from the vendor, trying to hide the issues and not coordinating with us. So when this happened, the next time if we find something, we won't be very nice with the vendor, right? So that's it. I hope you like it. I'm not sure if there are questions now or later.
Yes, Cesar, thanks so much for the presentation. I can relate to most of these things of your topic. So maybe interesting question is, what do you think is the worst industry in terms of responsible disclosure and all these processes? Is there, because I bet they're not all even in these terms.
Yeah, well, in general, IoT vendors are one of the worst right now because the worst are companies that are not mature in cybersecurity. So they don't have much knowledge about cybersecurity. They just worry about having a product out quickly. They don't even have security people in the company. They don't even have a clear way to report the findings. So they, some put some software and hardware together, release a new product, and that's it. And those are some of the worst. And there is a lot of that because every day there is a new IoT device, every day there is new thing that connect to internet. And sometimes those are companies that are not related maybe with technology. Maybe they were companies from different areas, different industries, and then they start to produce technology and they start to sell devices, but they don't have a background of technology. They don't have a background of development and cybersecurity. So they are very immature. They don't know almost nothing about cybersecurity, and so those are the worst.
But I think things you said, they can apply, I don't know, for finances, for example, because all these fintech startups who recently appeared, they also don't have anything on a background. Yeah, they basically buy something as a service, some white labels, and put their mobile app in front. Yeah, and they also don't care about security. So, but yeah, maybe IoT is slightly worse. Do you think that platforms like HackerOne, Backrot is really something good for the industry, for both sides, offensive, defensive, or because from my experience, then they more now likely go into the wrong direction, bringing a lot of attention from script kiddies for people who are just, do monkey job, just replicate vulnerability without actually thinking. So is HackerOne is a really good platform for researchers, or is just a platform for earning money?
Or is it a platform for, sorry?
Platform for earning money.
Yeah, I think it's complex in some way. I mean, they are a complementary solution for pen testing, security assessment, but it's not a replacement for those kind of services. I mean, if you're a company and you want to have your products, your network, your system audited, then maybe you can go with this kind of bug bounty platform, because in that way you will have a lot of people that is interested in finding vulnerabilities and getting some money, so it can help you to identify issues. But you should do that having a security program in place, not just randomly saying, okay, we're going to put this product on this bug bounty platform, and then we see what we do. Because you probably can get, 100 vulnerabilities reported, and then you have to know how to deal with that, and you have to fix all those issues. You have to triage them, etc. And that's a lot of work. And if you are not prepared, that won't help at all. The only difference is that between not knowing about the vulnerabilities is that now you will know that you have 100 vulnerabilities, but then the product will remain vulnerable. So it can help you depending on the kind of company, but for me, it's not a replacement of the traditional services where you hire a security consulting company, because a security consulting company have a lot of experience, has very skilled people, follow some formal procedures, can guarantee some coverage, etc. But in a bug bounty platform, then maybe you put a product there to be audited, but maybe nobody audited because you don't offer much money, so people start to look at other products, or maybe the product is not mature enough to be audited in that way, and like I said before, you end up with 100 or more vulnerabilities. So for me, in general, it's like they are complementary to regular services, And sometimes the companies help them because it's like kind of assurance. If someone finds a vulnerability, then they have a way to report it and to get some money. So it's like an easy way to keep researchers happy and not releasing 0 days. So like I said, it's complementary to regular services, but not a replacement.
Yeah, so the problem is that I sometimes see the opposite. So when the company starts a bug bounty program on HackerOne and they use HackerOne to keep an eye on their vulnerabilities because they are too immature and that they don't have their security staff, they have to deal with hundreds and thousands of like absolute rubbish submissions. And because of that, they can actually miss some pure gold, where actual researcher will be able to send them something reasonable. And because, for example, HackerOne staff won't be able to understand the importance or the impact of a specific market, like finances, how problems I can relate to, or IoT, this can end up really, really bad. So I think they're really good for really low-hanging fruits, some basic vulnerabilities, exploits, attacks. But as you said, they are not a replacement for an actual security research. Yeah.
Also because the vulnerability bug bounty platform is in the middle, sometimes they don't have the resources to test the issues. Especially when it's hardware. It happens to me recently that I wanted to report a vulnerability in some hardware, and the vendor said, no, you have to report this on this bug bounty platform. So I reported there, and I was asked for more details, and I say, I don't. They asked me for more detail because they say, we don't have the hardware. And I say, why you don't have the hardware if you have to test the issue? No, we are going to send the vulnerability information to the vendor, so we have to have more details. So in that case, I think it adds more noise because they put in the middle between the finder and the vendor, and they can't solve the problem, they can't communicate well. And this ended up then me dealing directly with the vendor and reported to the vendor and talking to the vendor. So in that case, I think when the platform can help you to easily triage the issues and they will just be a man in the middle in the communication, it doesn't help much for me, right? I mean, they can probably help you to get better reports or to filter some garbage. But then when it's a real vulnerability, they just add noise in the middle.
Yep, that's quite a painful topic. Thanks so much, Cesar. Thanks. Have a nice day.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today, and have a nice day too. Goodbye.